Hi everyone, I'm Kevin, and we're gonna go over AI in the future of creativity. Today we're gonna explore the impact of artificial intelligence in the creative space. I want you guys to introduce yourselves.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Sandy, and Xavier Delatour also, but Sandy is my artist name that I go by. I'm a artist, I'm a painter, and I'm also a graphic designer and marketing, like how could I say that, like freelancer, and then that's it.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me. My name is Sasha Stiles. I'm a poet, I'm an artist, an AI researcher, and I'm also a Web3 founder. I actually run a gallery for literary NFTs called The Verse, and The Verse is really all about giving poets and writers like me tech tools to sort of empower their practice and enable them to expand what they're doing creatively and also explore ways to sell poetry and literature on the blockchain. So basically like looking at how we can empower writers using tools like artificial intelligence and blockchain. Happy to be here.
Awesome. I am Jordan. I'm a multidisciplinary creative, mostly doing video and filmmaking and a bit of design and fashion work as well. I'm excited to be here.
All right, awesome. All right, and the first question we have is for Sasha. How has AI influenced the creative process in your writing, and what opportunities do you see for artists and creatives?
Yeah, so I've been working with AI and large language models since about 2018. So, many of you have probably heard of ChatGPT, and I'm sure you've used it, and that came out November of last year. So just a little about, over a year ago. I've been working with it for a long time, and, there was a moment where most of the writers that I knew, most of the folks that I knew in the art world were really not happy with me using AI, which, is still something we face even now. But there was this idea that if you were using AI as a writer, you were cheating, you were doing something wrong, you were being lazy, you were plagiarizing. And so for a long time, I was really, motivated to, really kind of challenge that perception and to kind of focus on the ways that using AI is a way to expand creative boundaries and kind of push past, preconceived notions of what we think writing is, or what we think literature is, or what we think creativity is. So for me, I think it's sort of a tool to help me get outside my own head in a way and almost augment my own imagination using, this collective consciousness, this vast system of information that I wouldn't be able to access otherwise, to be able to tap into that and then bring that back into my own work, my own art, my own writing through my own lens and through my own vision has been really, really exciting. And it feels like, there's so much more to discover, but it's already begun to shift how I think about the process of writing, the process of cognition, the process of creating things. It's made me think a lot about the way that I, as a human, am creatively inspired and the way that, ideas and influences sort of collide in my own head to create new ideas and new concepts, which is very similar in a way to the ways that AI systems, intelligent systems, neural networks actually function, as I've learned in my work as a researcher there too. So it's given me new perspective both on human creativity and on the possibility for machines to actually help us become increasingly creative and better problem solvers and more imaginative rather than the opposite, which I think is often this idea that machines are going to make us less creative and less unique, less imaginative as humans.
Awesome. And earlier you were telling me that you've been working with AI for about 6 years. What have you seen that's been the biggest difference in the technology 6 years ago when you first started and now?
Well, it's, I specifically work with large language models. And so that really is, I started with GPT-2, which is the sort of ancient ancestor of ChatGPT. And that really is a text prediction system, as we all know now. And it's really evolved, I think, to become very functional for things that are practical and logical and that have, sort of a commercial purpose. That's obviously one of the driving forces behind tools like ChatGPT is, it's not necessarily being made for poets like me to be able to play with, writing, machinic haiku or whatever. It's being evolved to be able to make it possible for us to write copy and create websites and power chatbots and stuff like that. So the challenge, I think, for me and kind of the change that I've observed is really seeing it go from something a little wilder, a little bit more untamed, a little bit more unpredictable and surprising, which for me was really exciting, and which for artists I think can be more exciting to see it go from that to something that's more refined, more predictable, that is more reliable for B2B functions. That also has its pros because it kind of makes it easier for you to know what's going to happen, but it also means you have to also figure out how to hack into that even more and make it do what you want to do. And you have to figure out how you then apply your own creative vision, your own unique point of view, so that you're using it in a very specific way and not being used by this tool that is being created by a big company for a specific purpose.
All right, Xavier, can you share an example of a personal project where AI played a significant role in enhancing your artistic expression?
Yes. So basically, being a painter, like I have to really focus on a lot of time my practice, where I have to be really focused on doing that. And at the same time, the world we live in today as an artist, you have to be promoting a lot of the stuff you do all the time, which also takes another logistical time and basically interfering with what you're trying to do with your art. So basically what these AIs are doing, like for example, the one I use the most is ChatGPT, of course, so I always have like drafts to write up. So I've never been like a great copywriter necessarily. But I've worked as a creative director for a long time in ad agencies. So I know how to select great copy. So I get on ChatGPT and I put in my idea, and that's always been a challenge for me, I feel, which backs up what you were saying at the end of the day. For artists, for example, right? At the end of the day, new technologies always come. From a paintbrush, to me, there's no difference from a paintbrush to AI. They're all tools that the artist can use in order to become more productive. And being in the world we live in today, where productivity is on demand, where we have to create a lot more, people are consuming a lot more data, way faster than actually we can kind of create it in a way that's not diluted, where it's kind of trash what you're putting out, So these tools help you be able to like come up with the first creative idea, the draft kind of, and then you can go in more into it and then put your touch on it. And that's always been the artist's responsibility to do that. There was nothing stopping me before that from looking at pictures of a Picasso and then painting like a Picasso. So it's kind of like this, at the end of the day, it's the artist's responsibility to push the art form that you live for forward by actually not being lazy and not trying to use this. There's always gonna be that. There's always gonna be people that do that. There's always gonna be people that make money with that, but it's up to you to decide at the end of the day what kind of artist you are and how you're gonna use these tools, So for me, it's like mostly writing text, writing proposals, stuff like that. It really helps me out with giving me that first draft, and then I can be like, okay, I need this to be this way, and then fine tune it myself. But that's mostly how I use it. Also, I use some Midjourney sometimes also for creative ideas for logos or anything like that. But I feel like these tools are not yet to the level I would need it to be, And besides that, like when you're using Photoshop, whether you're using any of these tools, all these tools have AI already in them. Like they do different things already, whether you're using a selection tool and it's like so much more advanced now, and then Photoshop has AI in it now also. And then when using that, it's pretty powerful. You see the potential of what it's gonna be. As a designer, like I see the potential of what it's gonna be, that it's not exactly where it needs to be. So I still need to really go in there and put my touch. Maybe that doesn't need to change so that I can still have to go put my touch in it. But I don't know, man, it's a tool like Photoshop to me, and then I use it a lot, and I think it's a good thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like you really saw the opportunity in AI to assist you within your projects. Earlier you were telling me you're an OG painter, and I know for a lot of people that could be scary to go into new technology. So how did that feel, like leaping into AI like that?
That's the thing. I'm an old school graphic designer from old school design. I went to Miami Ad School. That's when Photoshop was more basic than it is right now. And I remember my teachers telling me, they used to be like, you know what it was like to be a designer back in the days? In order for you to cut and paste, and by the way, that's why it says cut and paste on your computer. You actually had to cut every single letter and paste it on a piece of paper and then scan it and make your ads. And he was like, no matter how skilled you were, you might have been the best designer that day, and Photoshop came out, and all of a sudden there was a kid in his bedroom that could cut and paste way better than you at a way higher resolution, way faster. You know, so if you don't adapt to these new tools that come in, all that's gonna happen is that you're gonna get bitter and then you're not gonna catch up. You know, so for me, it was like, I've always had that mindset of like, dude, if I can have this AI, which is like you said, a common, like a collective consciousness of the best design around the world online, if I can have like an assistant that can give me drafts of that, bro, come on, man. Like, I'm never going back on Monsters looking for designers. Like, that's the thing, right? But that's the dangerous part about it, is that one person cannot have the power of like 100 designers. If you're using these tools the right way, you can be extremely productive. So it kind of creates like a problem in the sense that the work pool, now like you really have to step out of, that's where I think the problem is. You know, what happens to the workforce in a way, you know? Because if I can be 100 designers, that's 100 designers I'm not hiring. You know, so that's the only thing.
Definitely, the efficiency is unreal. At Red Waves, we do a lot of like overnight deliveries, and a lot of stuff is with events, right? So there's a lot of outside audio, and you know, our editors would have to stay just doing audio itself for like 2 or 3 hours, and now there's audio enhancers, and then from there it's just like a start, and then they can go and you know, engineer the audio a little bit better, and then maybe it'll take them like 20 extra minutes, but 20 minutes versus 3 hours,
Exactly.
completely different story, right?
100%.
All right, Jordan, in your time in San Francisco, working with some of the next generation AI startups, what have you seen that's new within some of these technologies, and how do you see that being impactful?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think there's kind of two parts of it. There's the tech itself, which is really exciting, and I can talk about some of the tools I've seen that I'm looking forward to using. But I think the bigger thing that I've found in my time there is a lot of these startups, because obviously their core employees are engineers, they're a little more forward and advanced in the way they use it. I think there's a ton to learn from how they approach AI in their creative process. And so in the time I've been there, there's been companies of like 5 people who are working on projects that would have taken 100-person teams before. And they're able to do so much with so little because they're using AI as just a lever for whatever work they're doing. And this allows them to really push the bounds, and one person becomes much more impactful. I think that's a great way to look at it. Like, yeah, there's a worry of, like, if you're taking 100 designers' jobs, that also means that one designer becomes 10. And if you're working on a project, you, as an individual creator, have so much higher potential in terms of what you can do. And things that you might not have the budget before, you can find collaborators with. You can be the collaborator and just use these tools to push yourselves in ways that you couldn't before. And in terms of some of the tools that I'm excited about, there's 2 that I've seen. I'm a little biased because they're my friends working on them, but I think they are pretty exciting. One is called iCore. It's AI generated video. And a lot of the video stuff I've seen in the past is just, it's like Mid-Journey, it's text to video, and that's great, but it doesn't allow you to be super nuanced in the changes that you're making. You kind of just have to put a prompt and hope that it does what you want. And they're tackling the animation industry and giving way more like refined tools for people to actually see their vision into reality. And I think that is really exciting. I think a lot of the video stuff I've seen before has been cool from a conceptual point in terms of like creating mood boards or helping you plan or maybe giving you a first draft of the script. But I think the real unlock will be when these tools help you in the actual production phase, not just the planning or the prepping phase. And then another one is called Kriya, which is more on the image and design generation base. And that works where on like the left side, you can sketch out a rough draft. And then on the right side, like you put a prompt and it'll give a Mid-Journey style. And so that, again, I think tools that just allow you to be more nuanced, like you mentioned the Photoshop tool, I think that's good because you can select certain points that you want to, adjust just this one lamp. And so I think any tool that allows you to be a little bit more refined than just one-shot text and producing something, those are the things that really excite me.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And as a creative director, you get a large workload of the project before the production actually comes in. How has it helped you in your pre-production specifically?
Yeah, I think the biggest way I use AI is kind of like an assistant, like you said. It helps me work through my thinking. And so if I have an idea, I'll have like a half-baked idea, I'll just throw it into ChatGPT and say, what do you think of this? Generate a list of ideas, and it'll come back. Most of them will be awful, but that's the creative process. You are just selecting from those, like, okay, maybe I like this one part of that idea. I'll take that. Can you generate more iterations off of that? And again, I think the artistic process is a lot about presence, and whether that's a painter and you paint for an hour and then you look back and say, okay, I like what happened here. I think what things like ChatGPT let you do is just shorten that gap. And so you can get 10 ideas and then ask yourself, okay, how does that make me feel? And then go from there.
Awesome. In what ways do you see the collaboration between human creativity and AI evolving in the coming years? This is open to anybody.
Sure, I can start. Well, I can start, I guess. Well, I guess jumping off what you were just saying, I've been working really closely with AI, not just using kind of off-the-shelf tools, but actually using customized versions of language models. That's kind of what got me really excited. I remember when I first started using GPT-2, my first attempt was just using kind of a no-code, off-the-shelf interface, and that was exciting, but it made me realize that I wanted to go even further, and I kind of wanted to know, how do I get that nuance? So what I started doing pretty early on was actually creating custom training data sets and then fine-tuning models so that this AI collaborator was actually writing, with my own kind of vocabulary, with my own sort of poetic style, with a sense of the work that I had already written. I basically took like all my, my human analog writings. I took manuscripts. I took research notes and things like that I'd been compiling, and used that all as a curated data set. And so basically what I ended up with is not just a generator, but I ended up with what I call my AI alter ego. So basically, me as a writer, but turbocharged and plugged into the internet, and then, plugged into collective consciousness, and plugged into the written record of humanity, which is not really an exaggeration because these models are trained on so much. So to me, that's more, in my work, it's more than an assistant. It's more than a collaborator, because there's this really intimate knowledge of the way that I see the world, and my own approach and my own philosophy and all that. But it also is marrying that with a very broad view of the world and things that I don't know myself. And to me, that's a really unique fusion of influences. And so again, that's why I kind of think about this relationship as being very synergistic, very symbiotic, more than a partnership. It's almost like we have merged into this third being, because everything that I'm making with AI, I couldn't make without AI, but the AI also couldn't have made it without me, because this is really a fusion of creative forces. So yeah, to me, it's really about that third voice, the third creative point of view that emerges from that collision of human and machine.
No, definitely. Do you guys have any take on that as well?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah,
Just
of course. How can AI contribute to breaking down barriers in the creative industry and making it more accessible to a diverse range of talents across different cultures?
All right. So basically, from what you said, right, I wanted to ask you this question the whole time you were saying that. How would you feel if, and this is not like a negative question at all, like I feel like it's an opportunity, as a matter of fact. How would you feel like if like a kid, right, that's somewhere not here, that doesn't have access to this, but actually has access to your writing and loves your writing and has an idea, right, of a book, which could be amazing. And then she uses your creative style to write that book. Yeah. And then you just get a cut. That's how it should be, right? Like, almost like music almost, you know, where basically if I can just go into a database of creators, whether it's my work or whatever, and be like, yo, I want to use this to create this. So basically it's like you said, you're connected to this consciousness, right? And anybody can kind of like grab your skill set and create something where you might have never met that person, but they just need to make it like an NFT or something like that, where once you use my data, I don't know how you would call it, my metadata or whatever, and then you use that, and then boom, I get money off that project that gets made, you know? So there's that side of it, of looking at it that, and looking at it like blockchain is, you know, like basically being able to be somewhere far away where you don't have access to necessarily that computer, but all you need is access to the internet. And once you have that, I can access to a computer, a mega computer that has Photoshop on it, and then I'm using that while I'm in, I don't know, wherever that is, and I don't have access to it. You know, so in that way, it's super exciting. So as I said a while ago, like it's taking 100 jobs, but at the same time, we don't know how. I don't even think we can fathom how big of creations we're gonna create. You know, how big of an industry we're gonna create. So even though right now, the way you look at it right now, the way the system is set up right now, you're looking at it like, yeah, it's gonna take 100 jobs. But I doubt that with that much power, like when I say power, not that I talk about like power, but like that much like power of what we can do and what we can create, we have no idea where this is gonna go. You know, I mean, I think I'm talking in a positive way. Yeah. You know, so in that sense, like it's gonna give a lot of people opportunities to interact with people that they would never have a chance to interact with on a regular basis. You know, and like you said, in a very personal, intimate space also. You know, and that's the super important collaboration, is getting to that space. You know, and sometimes, as a matter of fact, being in person might block that creative flow. You might not flow with the person, but if you're not there, that person might be able to flow with your creative. You know, so it's all about not being selfish at the end of the day, and being able to share information and not being threatened by what if my style gets out there. You can't create what I can create. You can use my style and create something like I was gonna create, but you can never create what I can create. So in that sense, I think it's gonna create a lot of bridges that are gonna really push humanity forward in ways we have no idea.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I think what you said about music is really interesting as an analogy. I think music seems to be much more forward in terms of their view on collaboration, like with people sampling songs. That's already very common practice. Mm-hmm. That's an interesting way to look at, like if you take somebody's writing, it's kind of like sampling their style. Yeah, if you can get to a point where you're attributing that correctly, then that'll be the big difference. But I think, I guess the question was, how do you see AI democratizing creativity or something along those lines? I think, like I said earlier, the ability for one person to have outsized impact is really cool. So I think YouTube, for example, and the internet allowed for a whole generation of creatives to make a career off of democratized access to creative tools and creative distribution. And I think AI is going to do that, but just on the actual creative side. So instead of doing a skit with your friends and posting that on YouTube, you can create a whole movie and do something a little more artistic, and have access to things that you wouldn't otherwise. And so, for example, with the Hollywood strikes, I completely understand why writers were worried and why they were striking and why they were trying to oppose AI. But I think the thing that's really cool is the idea of a young writer in LA who's 17 who can now create a feature-length film with his 5 friends in a year. And I think we're not too far off from that being a possibility.
No, definitely. You know, there's this big talk about how AI may make things a little bit less authentic if they use it improperly. And, you know, you guys have talked a lot about it assisting you and not fully using it to create a perspective for you. And that's where your art comes from, right? Your perspective and your vision on life. And do you think there should be ethical considerations that should be taken into account when integrating AI into the creative process so creatives don't steer too far away from their authentic self?
I feel there's ethical measures that should be taken into anything that's gonna go into the world at that like at that level, like at such a macro level, you know, and also that's gonna impact society regardless. Now, on the side of the last side of your question, like the creative side, like for the creative part, that's on you. That's not on, like AI can't do that. I don't see how they're gonna do anything in there on that besides making it extremely uncomfortable to work with. You know, if it's about creativity, you gotta literally let the door open and let the dogs loose and let it be what it's gonna be. You know, at the end of the day, like you can't really, how you gonna ethically surround an artist? You know, it's kind of like, it's an artist, he's gonna do what he's gonna do with it, you know, at the end of the day. And it's like any other tool you have. The responsibility at the end of the day to me is more on the user. Now there are ethical things to put in there, like so people can't create, so people can be protected. Like I was saying, like for the music, like some kind of, like something like an NFT protection, like a smart contract on it that protects you, stuff like that, so that you don't get exploited. But besides that, like I don't see what they would want to do something like that.
No, definitely. You guys have a take on that as well?
Yeah, I have one thing to add. I'll be brief in the interest of time, but I think I forget exactly how you worded the question, but something about not losing your creative voice. I think the bigger AI concern for that to me is on the distribution side, like AI models with TikTok, for example, that allow you to be super hooked to these platforms and feed you things that like suck your energy as you just waste away hours scrolling. I think that's the bigger threat to creativity, is just being inundated with all this information and not and like losing your own creative voice in that just because you're consuming so much. So I think on the other side, AI tools that help you understand yourself better can be a remedy to that, like fighting fire with fire. And so there's a couple of those, one called Thoughts. It's like a voice journal. You can ask questions. And another one called Manifest, which is similar, but more in terms of generating meditations for you. And so I think things like that, where you're using the tech behind these addictive platforms, but to better understand yourself, will be super interesting for creatives to tap back into their presence. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. Sasha, do you have a take on that as well?
I'll just say really quickly that I think one of the most interesting things for me about all of this is that it's made me really kind of rethink what creativity means to me, and it's made me sort of recalibrate the idea that a creative idea comes, from one source, or that, the idea that a writer, is sitting in their room at their desk, writing, without anyone else contributing at all. There's that kind of, that conception, that cliche of the genius artist or the genius writer kind of off, in their studio doing it on their own. And the fact is, and you were saying this before, we all are in conversation with each other. We're all in conversation with the other creatives that are around us. We're in conversation with the generations of creators who've lived before us, and hopefully we'll continue to be in conversation with creatives who come after us. That is the source of imagination and inspiration. It's other people, and it's the dialogue that we have with other people. So to me, I think that's one of the opportunities with AI, is to think about how much creativity depends on our collaboration and on, kind of pushing back on this competitive notion and realizing that if we, if we contribute to ideas together, we can come up with better and better ideas. So.
Oh, definitely. All right, we're going to take this time to ask the crowd one question. Does anyone have a question for the panel speakers? Awesome.
So basically, that's kind of what I was saying, So it's like something like that. Right now, it's extremely threatening to a lot of people, and with good reason, you know, because at the end of the day, change is friction. And like most changes in the world, a lot of people are gonna fall through the cracks, you know. So it is a legit fear to have, but at the end of the day, being blessed enough to be informed about it, then now you gotta step up and actually do the work and learn it and be like, you know what, I'm gonna use this. I have to use this tool, or else, even if you don't want to use it yourself, at least get a bunch of people that want to use it together, and then build a company around them if you don't want to use it, you know. But it's definitely here to stay, and I don't know. It's like it's better to actually adapt to it than to fight it, you know. Because at the end of the day, it's so powerful that people are gonna use it, you know. So.
Can I jump in with one last thought? I think okay, never mind. We don't have time. Okay, I'll finish. In any job that you get, you're always being hired for the assets that you bring to the table, whether that's your network, whether that's your skill set, your creative style. And so I think if you have that as an asset, like something that you've trained proprietary to you, then of course a business will find that attractive. But yeah, I think, like you said, it's just stay ahead of the curve if you can.
What are the best tools to learn AI better? What do you recommend? How do you learn this?
I think just like YouTube for me, just if you have like just working, like learning as you work. If you have an idea for something, you're like, oh, I wonder if that might be possible with AI. Just trying it and learning on the job, I think is the best way.
I think just jumping into Chat GPT is actually a good place to start, and playing with assistants, things like that, AI assistants. The things that are readily available are a really good kind of baseline, and you can actually use those tools in a meta way to also ask it questions about how to do it better, how to create better AI assistants and things like that. But there's so many resources out there, so just, doing a little bit of research is always a good thing, and then listening to podcasts is also good.
Listen to podcasts and jump into it. Like, get your feet wet. Like, that's the best way to learn, especially something like this, where you want it to be intuitive to you also, so that it doesn't sound like everybody else. You know, like you were saying, like you got your AI sound, like you got it to almost be like a second version of you, almost, where it can write for you and stuff like that. So basically, it's an intimate connection. So you don't want to be using the AI that I develop for me necessarily. You probably want to use the AI that's developed by you for you. You know, there's an episode of Black Mirror like that where she puts her consciousness in an egg, and then basically the consciousness is her, and it does everything in the house, wakes her up to the music she wants, bakes her bread toasts her bread exactly like she wants. You know, so it's kind of like that, but a little less dark. You know, but yeah, you gotta just jump in and you learn it yourself. That's it.
Right, and that's it for the panel. Thank you so much, guys. Round of applause for the panels.